Why are the Jehovah's Witnesses so afraid of apostates? Why does the Jehovah's Witness governing body teach all JWs to fear apostates? So why does a Jehovah's Witness mother ostracize her own child as an apostate? So why is it that the Jehovah's Witness governing body demand that JW family members ostracize all dissenters? Why would a husband dump his wife like a street tramp when she rejects the JW doctrines and gives Christmas presents and birthday presents? So just where do these unscriptural doctrines come from? In Jehovah's Witness history, many of the doctrines and practices of the Watchtower governing body were created by the Watchtower founder, Charles Taze Russell. But Russell's policy concerning apostates was that they would be destroyed with the rest of the non-believers in the soon-coming Armageddon of 1914. When Russell died in 1916, he left behind his printing empire to a board of directors of 7 trusted associates. This did not include his lawyer, J.F. Rutherford. However, Russell's lawyer, Rutherford, was not just an average lawyer. He was so brilliant that he had successfully defended religious freedom before the United States Supreme Court and won several additional court cases for the Watchtower organization. Russell's sudden death gave Rutherford the golden opportunity to take control of the vast printing empire that had taken Russell almost 30 years to build. J.F. Rutherford made several legal maneuvers to dismiss 4 members of the Watchtower Board of Directors, and then appointed his own sympathetic board members. J.F. Rutherford, a lawyer whom was claiming to be a judge, hijacked the entire printing empire and became its president for life. Watchtower Bible and Tract Society members began leaving by the thousands because of the hostile takeover. Additional lawsuits were filed and book sales plummeted. Rutherford began a policy of labeling these dissenters as apostates that God would soon destroy in the next new coming Armageddon. J.F. Rutherford had successfully stolen the golden goose. However, his position of president had to be confirmed by the voting stock members of the company. He could have lost the election without the help of the United States Federal Marshal. Rutherford had printed The Finished Mystery and other books opposing the draft, the war, and all governments during World War I. The U.S. government arrested him and a few other men and charged them with sedition and sent them to jail. Rutherford and his associates became instant martyrs for the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society, and Rutherford overwhelmingly won the election while he was still in jail. During his time in jail, Rutherford continued as God's new mouthpiece and editor of the Watchtower and was released on bail in 1919. He had taken control of all the physical assets of the printing empire and began to assert his control on the minds of the Watchtower readers. J.F. Rutherford's jealousy of C.T. Russell's notoriety became obvious, as J.F. Rutherford made numerous attacks on the memory of C.T. Russell in the minds of the readers. He exposed many of Russell's false prophecies, changed many of his doctrines, and pointed out that Russell's pyramidology teaching was not from God. At a 1931 Bible Student Assembly in Columbus, Ohio, Rutherford proposed a new name for the organization, the Jehovah's Witnesses, to differentiate his followers from the proliferation of other groups that followed Russell's teaching. Bible students who opposed or abandoned Rutherford to form new groups were increasingly described as the evil servant class, and his followers were told that it was wrong to pray for those who were unfaithful. C.T. Russell had built the printing empire, exploiting the fears of his readers by proclaiming that Jesus made an invisible return to earth in 1874 and the physical return of Jesus in 1878. The destruction of all the world's governments and Armageddon would take place in 1914, along with many other book-selling gimmicks. Rutherford used Russell's example of how to make book sales and proclaimed that Jesus made an invisible return to earth in 1914 and would establish theocratic rule in 1918 with the resurrection of the sleeping saints. In 1918, Watchtower Publications began predicting, under the direction of Rutherford as God's new mouthpiece, that the Old Testament prophets or princes would be resurrected back to earthly life in 1925. It was taught that these princes Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and so on, would become Earth's new leaders, and that their resurrection would be a prelude to the inauguration of a new earthly society and the abolition of death. C.T. Russell had previously taught that these individuals would be raised shortly after 1914. These princes would use Jerusalem as their capital, and some of the princes would be located in other parts of the earth. Despite the failure of this prediction, Rutherford continued to preach their imminent return and agreed to the building of Beth Sherim, which is Hebrew for House of Princes, a 10-bedroom mansion in San Diego, California, constructed in 1929 in anticipation of various resurrected Old Testament biblical patriots or prophets such as Abraham, Moses, David, Elijah, Elisha, Samuel. It was maintained by the Watchtower Society, the parent organization used by the Jehovah's Witnesses. However, Joseph Franklin Rutherford, the lifetime president of the Watchtower, moved into the mansion that was built for the resurrected prophets to live. What a surprise. Rutherford asserted that Christ died on a tree rather than a cross. He formulated the concept that Armageddon is God's war on the wicked and reinforced the belief that the start of Christ's millennial reign was imminent. He directed the readers not to celebrate customs such as Christmas and birthdays, salute national flags, or sing national anthems, and any other customs that were described as of pagan origin or encouraged creature worship and hence not be celebrated or practiced, but he still insisted be called Judge Rutherford. Again, dissenters were labeled as apostates and the devil and threatened with destruction by Almighty God in the next soon-coming Armageddon. He applied criticizing terms to those who had deserted Watchtower rank, applying the biblical description of evil servant to those who had left and opposed his teachings. He urged followers to view with contempt such ones who had openly rebelled against God's order or commandments. He also described as despicable elective elders of the 1930s who refused to submit to Watchtower Society administrative changes. Rutherford seemed to relish describing how completely the wicked would be destroyed at Armageddon. This is how the former prosecuting attorney, J.F. Rutherford, used his legal skills to control the entire printing empire. Just as he intimidated and threatened a criminal in court, he manipulated the thousands of Watchtower Bible and Tract Society members into believing that Almighty God would destroy everyone that did not accept without question his prophecies and his doctrines. J.F. Rutherford capitalized on deceiving the organization's members that just wanted to please God. He convinced them that he spoke the truth from God and silenced all questions and dissensions by threats of their destruction by an angry God. Rutherford superimposed himself as Jehovah God in the minds of the believing Jehovah's Witnesses. To defy J.F. Rutherford was the same as defying Jehovah God, a simple form of brainwashing. All of the Watchtower presidents and now the governing body have continued in these same mind control techniques. Jehovah's Witnesses are programmed to believe that the organization is Jehovah God's organization. Any dissension from the organization's demands or what it teaches is dissension from Jehovah God. The governing body continues to superimpose their will and teaching as the will and teachings of Jehovah God. So when an average person in their teenage years goes through their rebellious stage and crosses boundaries, rebels against authority, and attempts their independence, they are likely to be ostracized from the organization. Since the governing body has superimposed themselves as Jehovah God and then removed family and support systems from the teenager sees rejection from the organization as rejection from Jehovah God. This serves the purpose of the organization to maintain the undisputed control by the governing body. Any person or organization that superimposes themselves as Jehovah God has in fact become an idol. The organization of men that represents themselves as Jehovah's organization have attempted to usurp authority to grant or deny salvation to its members. These ostracized children, labeled and rejected as apostates by the organization and their own families, have been taught to believe that they cannot return to God unless they return and obey Jehovah's organization, the Watchtower. The simple answer to the question, why are Jehovah's Witnesses taught to fear apostates, is that it is an effective tool to control the minds of the organization's members. Jehovah's Witnesses have become their own thought police.